I opened my daughter-in-law's closet looking for my grandson's sweater and found a silicone pregnancy belly with the tags still on. My blood turned to ice when I realized she'd been lying to our entire family for 7 months. What I did next tore our family apart forever, but some lies are too dangerous to ignore. Thanks for joining me today. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city or country you're watching from. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon in our Phoenix home when my world shifted beneath my feet, like an earthquake I never saw coming. The autumn sun streamed through the kitchen window as I finished washing lunch dishes, the warm water running over my hands while I watched my grandson Noah playing in the backyard. At 8 years old, he had Julian's curious eyes and that mischievous smile that reminded me so much of my son at that age. "Abuela Elena, I'm cold," Noah called from the sliding door, his small arms wrapped around himself. The October air had turned crisp and he'd been outside in just his school polo shirt. "Come here, mijo." I dried my hands on the dish towel and pulled him close. His little body was indeed chilly to the touch. "Let's find your gray sweater, the one with the dinosaurs." I knew exactly where it was. Imani had mentioned folding it and putting it away in their bedroom closet upstairs just yesterday. After 3 years of marriage to my son Julian, she'd become meticulous about keeping Noah's things organized, something I'd always appreciated about her. She seemed to genuinely care for the boy, even though he wasn't biologically hers. Noah bounded up the wooden stairs ahead of me, his sneakers echoing through the hallway. Julian and Imani's bedroom door stood slightly open, afternoon light spilling across the hardwood floor. The room smelled faintly of Imani's vanilla perfume, mixed with the lavender fabric softener she always used on their bedding. "It's in the closet, right, Abuela?" Noah pointed toward the walk-in closet where Imani kept their clothes organized with military precision. Everything had its place, sorted by color and season. "Yes, sweetheart. Wait here on the bed while I look." I slid open the closet door and stepped inside. The familiar sight of Julian's work shirts hanging on the left, Imani's colorful dresses and blouses on the right. Noah's clothes occupied a small section in the middle, tiny hangers holding his school uniforms and play clothes. I reached toward the shelf where I remembered seeing the dinosaur sweater. My fingers fumbled behind a stack of Noah's folded jeans, searching for the soft gray fabric. Instead, they encountered something unexpected, something that felt strange and artificial. I pulled the object forward, and what I saw made my heart stop. A silicone pregnancy belly, flesh-colored, perfectly molded to mimic a 7-month pregnant stomach. The department store tags were still attached, swaying gently from the plastic. Security strings, size medium, realistic pregnancy prosthetic, $239. I stared at the thing in my hands, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be what I thought it was. My hands began to tremble as the implications crashed over me like a violent storm. Imani was 7 months pregnant. We'd celebrated when she told us the news in March. Julian had been beside himself with joy, already talking about converting the spare room into a nursery. He'd rubbed her growing belly every morning before work, whispering to his unborn child about the adventures they'd have together. Our entire family had rallied around this pregnancy, planning baby showers, buying tiny clothes, arguing over potential names. But here, in my shaking hands, was evidence that it was all a lie. "Abuela, did you find it?" Noah's voice drifted from the bedroom, innocent and trusting. "Just a minute, mijo," I managed to call back, though my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. I examined the prosthetic more carefully, my 30 years as a registered nurse kicking in automatically. The weight felt accurate for a 7-month pregnancy. The texture was remarkably realistic, complete with subtle veining and proper skin tone. This wasn't some cheap costume piece. This was a high-quality medical device, the kind used for training purposes or by actresses in long-term roles. My mind raced backward through recent months, analyzing every interaction with new eyes. Imani's morning sickness that seemed to come and go conveniently, the way she always wore loose clothing, even when we encouraged her to show off her bump. how she'd declined Dr. Helena Ortiz's offer to be her obstetrician, claiming she preferred a specialist across town that none of us had met, the baby shower we'd planned for next month, the nursery Julian had been painting on weekends, his face glowing with anticipation every time he showed me his progress, the way Andres had been setting aside money for his grandchild's college fund, joking about spoiling another grandbaby, all of it built on a lie. I carefully placed the prosthetic back where I'd found it, my hands still shaking. Noah's sweater was right there beside it, exactly where Imani had said it would be. The innocent gray fabric with smiling dinosaurs felt surreal next to the evidence of such massive deception. "Here we go, sweetheart," I said to Noah, helping him pull the sweater over his head. His trusting smile cut through me like a knife. This little boy had been so excited about becoming a big brother. He'd been practicing reading children's books out loud, preparing to help teach the baby. "Abuela, you look sad. Are you okay?" Noah's 8-year-old perception was sharper than most adults gave him credit for. "I'm fine, mijo, just thinking about grown-up things." I forced a smile and ruffled his dark hair. "Why don't you go finish your homework? I need to start dinner soon." As Noah skipped back downstairs, I remained in the bedroom, staring at the closed closet door. 27 years of marriage to Andres had taught me the importance of thinking before acting. Whatever I did next would change everything for our family. There would be no going back once this truth came out. But as I thought about Julian's joy, about the nursery he was preparing with such love, about the lies Imani told every single day while accepting our family's excitement and support, I knew I couldn't let this continue. Some deceptions are too cruel to ignore, especially when they involve the people you love most. I walked downstairs with legs that felt unsteady, my mind already formulating a plan. The evidence was clear, but I needed to be absolutely certain before I destroyed my son's world. Because once I revealed this truth, there would be no putting our family back together the way it was. The sound of Julian's key in the front door made my heart skip. He was home early from the accounting firm, probably eager to spend time with his pregnant wife and stepson. I watched him walk through the door, his face lighting up as he called out for Imani and Noah, and I felt my heart break for what I was about to do to him. But sometimes love means protecting people from beautiful lies, even when the truth will shatter everything they believe about their happiness. That evening, I couldn't sleep. While Andres snored softly beside me, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly in the darkness, my mind churning with questions that demanded answers. The silicone pregnancy belly haunted my thoughts like a ghost that wouldn't be laid to rest. I needed to be absolutely certain before I destroyed my son's world, but everything I'd seen pointed to one devastating conclusion. The next morning, I waited until Julian left for work and Imani drove Noah to school before I began my careful investigation. 30 years as a nurse had taught me the importance of thorough documentation and evidence-based conclusions. If I was going to accuse my daughter-in-law of such an elaborate deception, I needed facts, not just suspicions. I started in the kitchen, making myself a cup of coffee while reviewing the past 7 months in my mind like a detective examining a cold case. Imani had announced her pregnancy in early March, claiming she was 8 weeks along. That would make her due date sometime in November, which aligned with her current claim of being 7 months pregnant. But as I sipped my coffee and thought carefully about her behavior, inconsistencies emerged like cracks in a foundation. The morning sickness had been sporadic and convenient. I remembered the family barbecue in April where Imani had complained of nausea and couldn't eat any of the grilled chicken. But then I'd caught her in the kitchen later, secretly eating a full plate when she thought no one was looking. At the time, I'd chalked it up to pregnancy cravings being unpredictable. Then there was the doctor situation. When I'd offered to recommend Dr. Helena Ortiz, who had delivered both Julian and Lucia, and whom our family trusted completely, Imani had quickly declined. She claimed she'd already found a specialist across town, Dr. Martinez, who supposedly had experience with high-risk pregnancies. "Why high risk?" I had asked her, concerned. "Oh, just because of my age," Imani had replied vaguely. At 28, she was hardly at an advanced maternal age, but I hadn't pressed the issue. Now I wondered if Dr. Martinez even existed. I opened my laptop and searched for obstetricians named Martinez in the Phoenix area. Several came up, but when I called the 3 closest offices claiming to be confirming an appointment for my daughter-in-law, Imani Rivera, each receptionist told me they had no patient by that name. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. Another lie confirmed. I walked upstairs to Julian and Imani's bedroom, my heart pounding with each step. I needed to look at that prosthetic again, to make sure I hadn't imagined it in my shock yesterday. The bedroom was exactly as they'd left it. Bed made with military precision, Imani's perfume bottle perfectly aligned on the dresser. I opened the closet and reached behind Noah's clothes. The pregnancy belly was still there, tags still attached, hidden like guilty evidence. I pulled it out and examined it more closely in the daylight streaming through the bedroom window. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. It felt warm to the touch, probably designed to match body temperature when worn. The weight distribution was perfect, and there were even subtle stretch marks molded into the silicone. Adjustable straps suggested it could be worn under clothing for extended periods without detection. I found myself studying the price tag again. $239 was a significant investment for a costume piece. This level of quality suggested planning and commitment to the deception. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment lie that had gotten out of hand. This was calculated, deliberate fraud. I took photos with my phone, making sure to capture the tags and model number. If this came to legal action later, I wanted documentation. As I carefully replaced the prosthetic, I noticed something else. A small box tucked behind Imani's winter coats. Inside, I found printed emails from a maternity clothing website, orders for clothes in progressively larger sizes, tracking a fake pregnancy timeline, maternity bras, expandable pants, loose-fitting dresses designed to accommodate a growing belly. But there was more. Pregnancy test boxes, empty, but for one unused test. A book titled Your First Pregnancy Week by Week. Most disturbing of all, a pamphlet from an adoption agency with notes in Imani's handwriting about infant adoption, procedures, and costs. My blood ran cold. Was she planning to actually obtain a baby somehow to complete this elaborate charade? The implications were terrifying. I photographed everything before carefully replacing it all exactly as I'd found it. My nursing training had taught me to be thorough and methodical, and these skills were serving me well now in the most heartbreaking investigation of my life. That afternoon, I called my best friend, Carmen Delgado. We'd known each other for 40 years, and if anyone could give me objective advice about this impossible situation, it was her. "Elena, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" Carmen's voice was warm with concern. "I need to see you. Can you come over for coffee? Andres is at his Tuesday golf game, and I need someone to talk to." "Of course, mija. I'll be right there." When Carmen arrived, I led her to the kitchen and poured us both coffee with shaking hands. The weight of what I'd discovered felt like a boulder pressing on my chest. "Carmen, if you found out something that would destroy someone you love, but keeping the secret would let them live in a lie, what would you do?" Carmen studied my face with the sharp intelligence that had made her an excellent teacher for 30 years. "That depends on how dangerous the lie is. Some lies protect people, others destroy them slowly from the inside." I told her everything. The pregnancy belly, the fake doctor, the adoption pamphlets. With each detail, Carmen's face grew more serious, more concerned. "Dios mío, Elena. This isn't just a lie, this is fraud. If she's planning to actually obtain a baby through illegal means..." Carmen shook her head. "You have to tell Julian. This has gone far beyond family drama. This could involve criminal activity. But it will destroy him. You should see how happy he is, Carmen. He talks to that fake baby every night. He's already bought a crib, painted the nursery. This will break his heart." Carmen reached across the table and took my hands. "And what happens when 9 months pass and there's no baby? Or worse, what if she actually manages to get a child through whatever scheme she's planning? Julian deserves to know the truth, and that little boy Noah deserves protection from whatever this woman is capable of." I knew Carmen was right, but knowing and accepting are different things. I spent the rest of the afternoon sitting in my garden, watching the late afternoon sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, preparing myself for the conversation that would change everything. When Andres came home from golf, sunburned and cheerful, I almost told him first, but something held me back. I needed to confront Imani directly before involving anyone else. I needed to give her a chance to explain, even though I couldn't imagine any explanation that would justify such an elaborate deception. That night at dinner, I watched Imani carefully as she played her role of expectant mother. She rubbed her belly absently while talking about baby names. She complained about back pain and asked Julian to massage her shoulders. She declined wine with dinner, citing the pregnancy. Every gesture felt like a knife twisting in my heart because I knew the truth. But I also saw how genuinely happy she seemed, how natural the performance had become. That scared me more than anything else. How does someone lie so completely, so convincingly, to people who love them? Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow, I would confront her with the evidence and demand the truth. Tonight, I would let my son have one more evening of happiness before his world came crashing down. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Andres's peaceful breathing and knowing that Julian and Imani were sleeping in the room directly above us, I wondered if I was making the right choice. Sometimes the truth is a weapon that wounds everyone it touches, including the person who wields it. Wednesday evening brought our weekly family dinner, a tradition I'd maintained for over 20 years. Every week, Andres and I hosted Julian, Imani, and Noah, along with our daughter Lucia when her nursing schedule allowed. These dinners had become even more special since Imani's pregnancy announcement, with everyone eagerly discussing the coming baby. Tonight felt different for me, watching the scene unfold with the terrible knowledge I carried. I moved through the familiar motions of setting the table with our good china, arranging the centerpiece of fresh flowers, preparing Julian's favorite arroz con pollo. But every gesture felt weighted with the secret burning inside me. Julian arrived first, as always, his face glowing with the contentment that had defined him these past 7 months. At 32, my son had finally found the happiness that had eluded him after his difficult divorce from Noah's biological mother 3 years ago. Imani had brought stability to his life, love to his heart, and purpose to his future. "Mommy, something smells incredible," he said, kissing my cheek before heading straight to the kitchen to steal a taste of the sofrito. This had been our ritual since he was Noah's age, and it warmed my heart even as it broke it. "How's work, mijo?" I asked, stirring the rice and trying to keep my voice normal. "Busy season's starting, but I don't mind. I want everything perfect for when the baby comes." His eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Did I tell you I finished painting the nursery yesterday? Wait until you see it, Mommy. Soft yellow walls with little elephants. Imani picked out the most beautiful mobile." Each word felt like a small death. I watched my son's animated face as he described the nursery he'd lovingly prepared for a child that didn't exist, and I wondered how I would find the strength to destroy such pure joy. Imani arrived 20 minutes later, moving with the careful gait she'd adopted to suggest late pregnancy discomfort. She wore a flowing emerald maternity dress that perfectly concealed the prosthetic I now knew was underneath. The performance was flawless, so natural that even knowing the truth, I found myself almost believing it. "Elena, thank you for having us," she said, offering a warm smile as she settled carefully into her chair, one hand supporting her fake belly. "I've been craving your cooking all day." "How are you feeling, mija?" Andres asked with grandfatherly concern, pouring her a glass of sparkling water. "Getting close to the home stretch now." "Tired but excited," Imani replied, rubbing her stomach in that unconscious gesture I'd seen countless pregnant women make. "The baby's been so active today. I swear this little one is going to be a soccer player like their daddy was." Julian's face lit up at this. He'd played soccer through college and often talked about teaching his children the sport he loved. "Really? Can I feel?" "Of course." Imani guided his hand to a specific spot on her belly. "Right there. Do you feel that?" Julian's expression transformed into wonder. Oh my God, yes. That was definitely a kick. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Mommy, this baby is strong, just like Noah was. I forced a smile, but inside I was screaming. How was she creating the sensation of fetal movement? The prosthetic was sophisticated, but not that sophisticated. Was she somehow manipulating muscles to create false movement? Or was Julian so eager to feel his child that he was imagining it? Noah bounded into the dining room then, school backpack still slung over his shoulder, saving me from having to respond. Abuela Elena, is dinner ready? I'm starving. Wash your hands first, mi amor, I instructed, grateful for the distraction. As we gathered around the table, I watched our family dynamic with new eyes. Lucia arrived just as we were saying grace, still in her hospital scrubs from her shift at Phoenix General. She hugged everyone warmly, her hands lingering on Imani's belly with the professional interest of a labor and delivery nurse. How are you feeling, Hermana? Lucia asked. Any Braxton Hicks contractions yet? A few, Imani replied smoothly. Nothing regular, though. I watched my daughter's face carefully. Lucia had delivered hundreds of babies and had an expert eye for pregnancy progression. If anyone would notice inconsistencies, it would be her. But Imani's performance remained flawless, and Lucia nodded approvingly. That's normal for 30 weeks. Your body's just practicing. Have you been doing your prenatal exercises? Religiously, Imani laughed. Julian makes sure of that. He's become quite the pregnancy police. The conversation flowed naturally around baby preparations, work updates, and Noah's school activities. Andres regaled us with stories from his golf game, while Julian shared his latest client success. Noah chattered about a science project on butterflies, his 8-year-old enthusiasm infectious. But underneath the normalcy, I studied Imani with clinical attention. How long had she been planning this deception? What was her endgame? During a lull in conversation, I decided to probe gently. Imani, have you given any more thought to a baby shower? Carmen was asking about dates, and we should plan soon if we want to coordinate with everyone's schedules. Something flickered across her face. So briefly, I almost missed it. Fear? Panic? But she recovered quickly. Actually, I've been thinking maybe something small would be better. I don't need a big celebration. This was new. 3 months ago, she'd been enthusiastic about a traditional shower with all our friends and extended family. Julian looked surprised, too. But babe, you were so excited about showing off your bump to everyone, and Mommy's been planning this for months. I know, but I'm just feeling overwhelmed lately. Hormones, you know? She smiled apologetically. Maybe just immediate family? I watched Julian's face fall slightly. He'd been looking forward to celebrating with everyone, proud to show off his growing family. But he recovered quickly, reaching over to squeeze her hand. Whatever makes you comfortable, Amor, we can do exactly what you want. The tender gesture between them made my heart ache. Julian truly loved this woman, and she was betraying that love in the most fundamental way possible. But why? What could drive someone to maintain such an elaborate deception? As dinner progressed, I began to notice other small things. Imani ate heartily, showing none of the appetite changes common in late pregnancy. She moved more easily than most women at 30 weeks, despite her careful performance of discomfort. When Noah accidentally bumped into her while reaching for dessert, she didn't react with the protective instinct typical of expectant mothers. But most telling was her interaction with Noah himself. She was kind to him, affectionate even, but there was a distance there. Not the growing bond between a pregnant woman and her older child, but something more calculated. She played the role of loving stepmother perfectly, but it felt like exactly that, a performance. After dinner, as Julian and Andres retreated to the living room to watch sports and Noah worked on homework, I found myself alone with Imani in the kitchen. She was drying dishes while I packed leftovers, the domestic scene deceptively peaceful. Thank you for dinner, Elena. Your cooking always reminds me of my grandmother's, she said softly. I'm glad you enjoyed it, mija. I paused, choosing my words carefully. How are you really feeling about becoming a mother? It's such a big change. She was quiet for a long moment, her hands stilling on the dish towel. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ready, she admitted. It's overwhelming, thinking about being responsible for another life. The vulnerability in her voice surprised me. For a moment, she seemed like the young woman who had first joined our family, uncertain, eager to belong, genuinely caring. But then I remembered the adoption pamphlets hidden in her closet, the fake doctor appointments, the elaborate prosthetic. And I wondered if even this moment of honesty was part of her performance. Being a mother changes you in ways you can't imagine, I said gently. But love has a way of making you stronger than you think you are. Oh. She looked at me then with an expression I couldn't read. Guilt? Longing? Fear? I hope so, she whispered. That night, as our family said their goodbyes and Julian helped a seemingly tired Imani to their car, I watched from the window as they drove away. The taillights disappeared into the Phoenix night, carrying my son toward another evening of living in a beautiful lie. Tomorrow, I decided with finality, tomorrow I would confront Imani directly and demand the truth. Our family deserved better than this elaborate deception, and Julian deserved to know the woman he'd married before it was too late to protect himself and Noah from whatever she was really planning. Thursday morning arrived gray and overcast, matching the storm clouds gathering in my heart. I'd barely slept, my mind cycling through scenarios and conversations, trying to find a way to handle this situation that wouldn't destroy everyone I loved. But by dawn, I knew there was no gentle way to expose a lie this massive. The truth would be devastating, regardless of how carefully I delivered it. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had grown cold, staring at the photos on my phone. The evidence was undeniable. The pregnancy prosthetic, the fake medical appointments, the adoption agency pamphlets, each image felt like holding a grenade with the pin already pulled. Andres had left early for a breakfast meeting with his business partner, unaware that his daughter-in-law was living a lie that could tear our family apart. I'd considered telling him first, getting his support before confronting Imani, but something held me back. This needed to be handled delicately, and Andres, bless his heart, had never been subtle when he was angry. I knew Julian's schedule by heart. He left for work at 7:30 every morning, dropping Noah at school on his way to the accounting firm. Imani usually stayed home on Thursdays, claiming she needed rest days due to her pregnancy fatigue. Today, that routine would work in my favor. At 9 o'clock, I called Imani's cell phone, my hands trembling slightly as I dialed. "Elena, is everything okay?" Her voice carried immediate concern, a habit she'd developed since announcing her pregnancy. The family had been protective of any unexpected calls, worried about emergencies. "I'm fine, mija. I was wondering if you had time for coffee this morning. I have something I'd like to discuss with you." There was a pause. "Of course. Would you like to come here, or should I meet you somewhere?" "I'll come to you, if that's all right. I know traveling is getting difficult." The irony of those words tasted bitter in my mouth. "Perfect. I'll put on a fresh pot." As I drove the familiar 15-minute route to Julian's house, I rehearsed what I would say. How do you confront someone about such an elaborate deception? How do you give them a chance to explain something that seemed inexplicable? I decided on a direct approach. Show her the evidence, ask for an explanation, and give her one opportunity to tell the truth before I involved Julian. It seemed fair, though nothing about this situation felt fair to anyone involved. The house Julian had bought when he married Imani sat on a quiet street lined with young mesquite trees. It was a modest 2-story home with a small front yard that Julian kept meticulously maintained. Seeing the swing set he'd installed for Noah and the garden bed Imani had planted with herbs reminded me of all the normal, happy family moments that had played out here over the past 3 years. Imani answered the door wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater that cleverly concealed her midsection. Even in casual clothes, she maintained the illusion perfectly. Her smile was warm and genuine, making what I was about to do feel even more difficult. "Come in, Elena. I just finished making coffee. How about we sit in the living room?" I followed her through the familiar space, past family photos that showed our blended family's journey, pictures of Julian and Imani's wedding, vacation shots with Noah, holiday celebrations at our house. In every recent photo, Imani's hands rested protectively on her belly, the performance extending even to candid moments. "How are you feeling today?" I asked, as we settled onto the couch, buying myself time to gather courage. "A little tired, but good. The baby was active all night." She rubbed her stomach with that practiced gesture. "Julian thinks we're having a soccer player." Each lie felt like a physical blow. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the coffee table between us. "Imani, I need to ask you about something I found yesterday." Something shifted in her expression. The easy smile faltered slightly, and I saw a flicker of wariness in her eyes. "What do you mean?" I opened the photo gallery on my phone and turned the screen toward her. The image of the silicone pregnancy belly filled the display, price tags clearly visible. The color drained from Imani's face. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock Julian had inherited from his grandfather. "Where did you find that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "In your closet, looking for Noah's sweater." I kept my tone calm and steady, the same voice I'd used with patients when delivering difficult diagnoses. "I think you owe me an explanation." Imani's hands moved instinctively to her belly, then stopped abruptly as if she'd caught herself in the lie. She looked down at her lap, shoulders shaking slightly. "I can explain," she said finally. "I'm listening. It's not what you think. I mean, it is, but it's more complicated than that." She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "I was pregnant, Elena. I really was, but I lost the baby at 12 weeks. My heart clenched despite everything. Miscarriage was devastating, and I could understand the grief that might drive someone to desperate actions. But this didn't explain 7 months of deception. Why didn't you tell us? We would have supported you through the loss." "Because Julian was so happy." The words came out in a rush. "You all were so happy, and I'd already lost 1 pregnancy before I met Julian, and I thought if I told him I lost another baby, he might think I was broken, that I couldn't give him the family he wanted." "So you decided to fake the entire pregnancy instead?" She nodded miserably. "At first, I thought I'd just delay telling him for a few weeks, give myself time to get pregnant again, but weeks turned into months, and the lie got bigger and bigger until I didn't know how to stop." I studied her face, trying to determine how much of this explanation was true. The grief seemed genuine, but the logic was deeply flawed. "Imani, what's your plan here? You can't fake a pregnancy forever. What happens when 9 months are up?" "I've been looking into adoption," she whispered. "Private adoption, where I could get a newborn and tell everyone I delivered naturally." The adoption pamphlets I'd found suddenly made sense, but in the most disturbing way possible. "You were planning to buy a baby to cover up your lie?" "Not buy. Adopt, legally." But even as she said it, she looked uncertain. I leaned forward, my voice gentle but firm. "Mija, this has gone far beyond a white lie. You're talking about fraud, about obtaining a child under false pretenses. This isn't just about Julian anymore. This could be criminal." She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. I know it's wrong, but I'm in so deep now and I don't know how to get out without losing everything." Looking at this broken woman crying on her couch, I felt a complex mix of anger, pity, and fear. The situation was even worse than I'd imagined, but at least now I understood the desperation behind it. "We need to tell Julian the truth," I said quietly. "Today." She looked up at me with terror in her eyes. "He'll leave me. He'll never forgive me." "Maybe, but continuing this lie will only make things worse. And if you really love my son, you'll give him the chance to decide for himself what he can forgive." The weight of what was coming settled over both of us. In a few hours, our family would be forever changed. We sat in heavy silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Imani continued crying softly while I processed everything she'd told me. The grief over her miscarriage was real, but the solution she'd chosen was catastrophic. Now came the hardest part, telling Julian that his entire world was built on a lie. "We need to call him," I said finally. "Ask him to come home for lunch." "Elena, please. Can we wait until tonight? Let me figure out how to explain this properly." No, mija, this has gone on long enough. Every minute you delay is another minute you're lying to him. I kept my voice gentle but firm. He deserves to hear this from you, not discover it some other way. Imani's hands shook as she reached for her phone. I watched her struggle with the simple act of dialing her husband's number, and despite my anger at the situation, I felt pity for her. She was about to destroy the life she'd been so desperate to preserve. Julian? Hi, baby. Her voice cracked slightly. Could you come home for lunch? I need to talk to you about something important. I could hear Julian's concerned voice through the phone, though not his exact words. No, I'm fine. Elena's here with me. Could you come home? Please? After she hung up, we waited in uncomfortable silence. I made us both fresh coffee, though neither of us drank it. Imani paced around the living room, occasionally stopping to touch picture frames or straighten pillows, nervous habits that betrayed her growing panic. What if he calls the police? She asked suddenly. Did you break any laws? I don't know, maybe? The adoption thing. I was working with someone who said they could expedite the process if I paid extra fees. It didn't sound completely legitimate. My heart sank further. This was even worse than I'd thought. Imani, you could have been involved in human trafficking. She collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing again. I just wanted to make him happy. I just wanted to be the wife he deserved. The wife he deserved would have told him the truth from the beginning. 25 minutes later, I heard Julian's car in the driveway. My stomach clenched as his key turned in the lock. In a few moments, my son's happiness would be shattered, and there would be no putting it back together. Babe? Mom? Julian called out as he entered. He appeared in the living room doorway, still wearing his work clothes, his face creased with worry. What's going on? You sounded upset on the phone. He looked between Imani's tear-stained face and my grave expression, and I saw the moment fear really took hold of him. Is it the baby? Did something happen to the baby? Imani let out a broken sob at those words, and Julian rushed to her side, kneeling beside the couch to take her hands in his. Tell me what's wrong. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. The tenderness in his voice, the immediate protective instinct, made what was about to happen even more cruel. I looked at Imani, giving her one last chance to speak first. I can't, she whispered. I can't do it. Julian's eyes moved between us, confusion and panic growing. Mom, what's happening? Why won't anyone talk to me? I pulled my phone from my purse and opened the photo gallery. Julian, sit down, mijo. I don't want to sit down. I want someone to tell me what's wrong with my wife and baby. There is no baby, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Julian stared at me as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. What do you mean there's no baby? I held up my phone, showing him the picture of the silicone pregnancy belly. I found this in Imani's closet yesterday. Julian looked at the image, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and the first stirrings of horror. I don't understand. What is that? It's a pregnancy prosthetic. Imani hasn't been pregnant for the past 7 months. She's been wearing this. That's impossible. Julian turned to his wife, his voice desperate. Babe, tell her she's wrong. Tell her this is some kind of mistake. Imani couldn't meet his eyes. She sat hunched over, tears streaming down her face, her silence serving as confirmation. Imani. Julian's voice was barely a whisper now. Look at me. She raised her head slowly, and the guilt written across her face told him everything he needed to know. Oh my God. Julian stood up abruptly, backing away from the couch as if she'd become dangerous. Oh my God, this isn't real. You've been, this whole time. Julian, let me explain, Imani started, but he held up a hand to stop her. Explain what? Explain how you've been lying to my face every single day for 7 months? Explain how you let me paint a nursery for a baby that doesn't exist? Explain how you let my family plan baby showers and buy clothes and get excited about a grandchild that's never coming? His voice rose with each word, years of contained emotion erupting all at once. I'd never seen my son this angry, this betrayed. I was pregnant, Imani said desperately. I really was at first. But I lost the baby at 12 weeks, and I couldn't bear to tell you. You were so happy, and I thought if I could just get pregnant again quickly. So you decided to fake it instead? Julian's voice cracked. For 7 months, you looked me in the eye every single day and lied to me. You let me talk to your belly every night. You let me feel fake kicks. You went to fake doctor appointments while I worried about you and our baby. I know it was wrong, but I was scared. Scared? Julian laughed bitterly. You were scared, so you decided to commit fraud? Because that's what this is, Imani. Fraud. What was your end game here? What happened when 9 months came and went? Imani's silence stretched too long, and I saw Julian's face change as understanding dawned. You were planning to get a baby somehow, weren't you? You were going to steal someone's child, to cover up your lie. Not steal, Imani protested weakly. Adopt. I found someone who could help. Jesus Christ. Julian ran his hands through his hair, pacing now like a caged animal. You were planning to buy a baby on the black market. Do you have any idea what you could have gotten us involved in? What you could have done to Noah? To our family? At the mention of Noah, something shifted in Julian's expression. A new kind of horror. Noah, he said quietly. My son. You let my 8-year-old son get excited about being a big brother. You let him practice reading to the baby. You bought him Big Brother books. You've been lying to a child. That seemed to break something in Julian. He sat down heavily in the armchair across from us, his head in his hands. I don't know who you are, he said without looking up. The woman I married wouldn't do this. The woman I fell in love with couldn't lie like this. I'm still me, Imani whispered. I just made terrible choices because I was afraid of losing you. Well, congratulations, Julian said bitterly. You've managed to lose me anyway. The devastation in my son's voice broke my heart. I wanted to comfort him, to somehow fix this. But I knew there were no words that could repair damage this deep. I need you to leave, Julian said finally, still not looking at Imani. I need you to pack your things and leave my house. Julian, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. Get out. His voice was quiet but final. Get out of my house before I call the police about the adoption fraud. Imani looked at me desperately, as if I might intervene on her behalf, but I had no words of comfort for her. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. As she walked upstairs to pack, I sat with my son in the wreckage of his marriage, wondering how our family would ever recover from this betrayal. The sound of drawers opening and closing echoed through the house, each noise a punctuation mark in the end of their relationship. Julian sat motionless in his chair, staring at nothing, his breathing shallow and uneven. I wanted to reach out to him, to offer some comfort, but I knew he needed time to process the magnitude of what had just happened. Did you know? He asked suddenly, his voice hoarse. When you came here today, did you already know everything? I found the prosthetic yesterday, I admitted, but I wanted to give her a chance to explain before I told you. You should have told me immediately. There was no anger in his voice, just empty disappointment. I've been living a lie for 7 months, Mom, 7 months of my life that I'll never get back. I wanted to protect you from the pain. By letting me live in delusion? He finally looked at me, and the devastation in his eyes was almost unbearable. I talked to that fake belly every night. I told my unborn child about my day, about how much I loved them already, about the life we were going to build together. I felt kicks that weren't real. I made plans for a future that was never going to happen. The self-recrimination in his voice broke my heart. This isn't your fault, mijo. You loved your wife and trusted her. That's what marriages are supposed to be built on. But how could I not know? How could I live with someone for months and not realize they were lying about something this fundamental? He shook his head. What does that say about me as a husband, as a man? It says you're trusting and loving. Don't let her betrayal make you doubt your own character. Julian stood up abruptly and walked to the mantelpiece, where photos of their life together lined the shelf. Wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, family gatherings. In every recent photo, Imani's hand rested on her belly, the lie documented in dozens of family memories. Look at this, he said, picking up a picture from their anniversary dinner last month. She's rubbing her fake belly even here. Even in our private moments, she was performing. How do you fake intimacy like that? I don't know, mijo. I don't understand how someone could maintain such a deception. And Noah. Julian's voice cracked as he mentioned his son. How do I explain this to Noah? He's been so excited about being a big brother. He's been saving his allowance to buy baby toys. How do I tell an 8-year-old that it was all a lie? We'll figure it out together. The whole family will help him understand. Will we? Will Dad ever be able to look at me the same way, knowing I was so blind to what was happening in my own home? Will Lucia ever trust my judgment again? Your family loves you, Julian. This doesn't change that. He laughed bitterly. Doesn't it? I brought this woman into our family. I vouched for her. I asked everyone to love her and accept her, and all this time she was planning to commit crimes to maintain her lie. The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted us. Imani appeared in the doorway with a large suitcase, her face blotchy from crying. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her exposed deception. I've packed some things, she said quietly. I'll come back for the rest when you're not here. Julian didn't turn around. Don't come back when Noah's here. I don't want him to see you until I figure out how to explain this. Julian, please. I know I made terrible mistakes, but I love you. I love this family. Can't we try to work through this? Now he did turn, and the look he gave her was devastating in its finality. Love doesn't lie, Imani. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't plan to commit fraud to cover up deception. Whatever you felt for me, it wasn't love. That's not true. Everything I did was because I loved you too much to lose you. No, Julian said firmly. Everything you did was because you loved yourself too much to tell the truth. There's a difference. Imani looked at me one last time, perhaps hoping I might say something to change Julian's mind, but I had nothing to offer her. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for all of it. So am I, Julian replied. I'm sorry I ever trusted you. After she left, the house felt different, emptier but also cleaner somehow, as if the lies had been physically removed along with her presence. Julian and I sat in silence for a long time, both processing the enormity of what had just happened. What happens now? He asked eventually. Now we heal, I said. It will take time, but we'll get through this. Our family is stronger than her lies. I hope you're right, Mom, because right now, I don't know how I'll ever trust anyone again. As I held my broken son, I realized that while the truth had set us free from Imani's deception, it had also shattered something precious and irreplaceable. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but at least now we could walk it together in honesty and truth. 3 months later, our family was still learning how to breathe again. The holidays had come and gone in a subdued fashion, missing the joy that Imani's fake pregnancy had promised to bring. Julian's house felt different now, quieter, more cautious, like a patient recovering from major surgery. I sat in Julian's living room on a crisp February morning, watching Noah work on a puzzle at the coffee table. The 8-year-old had handled the truth better than any of us expected, with the resilience that children sometimes possess. Julian had explained it simply. Imani had been sad about losing a baby and made some bad choices because of that sadness. She wouldn't be living with them anymore. Abuela Elena, do you think Papa Julian will ever get married again? Noah asked without looking up from his dinosaur puzzle. I don't know, mi amor. That's something only your papa can decide. I hope he finds someone who doesn't lie to him. The wisdom in that simple statement from a child's mouth never failed to amaze me. Noah had processed the betrayal in his own way, and while he'd been disappointed about not becoming a big brother, he'd adapted with the flexibility that made children so remarkable. Julian appeared from the kitchen carrying 2 cups of coffee, his movements more deliberate these days, as if he was consciously rebuilding his life one careful step at a time. The man who had once moved through the world with easy confidence now approached everything with measured caution. Any word from the lawyer? I asked as he handed me my coffee. Divorce papers should be finalized next month, Imani didn't contest anything, which made it easier. He settled into his armchair, the same one where he'd learned the truth about his marriage. Her lawyer says she's moved back to California to stay with her sister. Have you heard anything about the adoption situation? Julian's jaw tightened. The FBI investigation is ongoing. Turns out the woman Imani was working with was part of a larger network trafficking babies from Central America. They arrested her 2 weeks ago. The magnitude of what Imani had almost involved our family and still took my breath away. Thank God you found out when you did. Thanks to you, Julian said quietly. I've been thinking about that a lot. If you hadn't found that prosthetic, if you hadn't confronted her, I could have unknowingly become part of a human trafficking operation. Don't think about what could have happened. Focus on what did happen. The truth came out, and now you're free to rebuild. Julian sipped his coffee, staring out the window at the yard where he'd once imagined teaching his unborn child to play soccer. Some days, I wonder if I'll ever trust my own judgment again. How do you live with someone for 3 years and not see who they really are? This was a conversation we'd had many times over the past 3 months. Julian's therapist had helped him understand that manipulation and deception were skills that some people perfected over years. The fact that he'd been fooled didn't make him naive or stupid. It made him human. You saw who she presented herself to be, I reminded him. That's all any of us can do. But there were signs, Mom. Looking back, there were always little things that didn't add up. I just explained them away because I wanted to believe the best of her. That's called love, mijo. And despite what happened, I'm glad you're capable of that kind of love. Don't let her betrayal make you cynical. Noah finished his puzzle and came over to climb onto Julian's lap, something he'd been doing more often since Imani left. The little boy seemed to sense his father's emotional fragility and had become more affectionate, more protective. Papa, can we go to the park today? I want to practice my batting. Of course, buddy, after lunch, okay? As I watched my son with his boy, I saw glimpses of the man he'd been before Imani's deception. The healing was slow but steady. Julian was rediscovering who he was without the constant weight of lies pressing down on him. How's Lucia handling everything? Julian asked after Noah had gone back to his puzzle. She's angry. You know your sister. She doesn't forgive easily when someone hurts family, but she's also proud of how you've handled everything. And Dad? Your father wants to drive to California and have a conversation with Imani that would probably land him in jail. I smiled despite the serious topic. I've convinced him that you don't need him fighting your battles for you. Julian laughed, and the sound filled me with hope. It was the first genuine laugh I'd heard from him since that terrible day in November. Sometimes I feel guilty for feeling relieved, he admitted. Is that wrong? To be grateful that it's over? Not at all. You're free now, Julian. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free to build whatever life you want. I want to focus on Noah for now, and work, and figuring out who I am as a single father. That sounds like a good plan. That afternoon, I joined Julian and Noah at the park, watching my grandson swing the plastic bat with determination while Julian pitched gentle underhand tosses. The sight of them together, rebuilding their relationship in the wake of betrayal, reminded me why I'd made the difficult choice to expose Imani's lies. Some people might argue that I should have minded my own business, that I should have let Julian discover the truth on his own. But as I watched my son laugh at Noah's enthusiastic but wild swings, I knew I'd made the right choice. Love sometimes means destroying beautiful illusions to reveal ugly truths. It means accepting that people you care about will be hurt in the short term to protect them from greater damage in the long term. It means standing up for what's right, even when it makes you the bearer of devastating news. As we walked home from the park, Noah's small hand in Julian's and the comb, setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since finding that pregnancy prosthetic. Our family had been broken by lies, but we were healing through truth. Mom, Julian said quietly as we reached his front door, thank you for having the courage to tell me what I needed to hear instead of what I wanted to hear. That's what mothers do, mijo. We protect our children, even when they're grown men with children of their own. That night, as I sat in my own living room with Andres, telling him about our day, I reflected on the lesson this ordeal had taught me. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's lies, even when exposing the truth will cause pain. Did you enjoy the story? Tell me what you would have done in their place. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. If you'd like to support my work, please subscribe. Thank you for being here. Your support means the world. See you in the next one.